General Vexathon's voice echoed through the Galactic Alliance's high command chamber. 6 tentacles gripped the edge of the holotable so tightly that his knuckle ridges turned pale blue. Around him, the other 12 generals of the Alliance's most powerful species stared at the intelligence report, with expressions ranging from disbelief to outright terror. Admiral Kelshara of the Ardatian Armada cleared her throat. All 4 of them. I'm afraid the intelligence is quite reliable, General. The humans, they conduct military exercises on what they casually refer to as death worlds. What, like simulations? Asked Brigadier Zorlak, his crystalline exoskeleton clinking nervously as he shifted his weight. No, replied Kelshara, her voice unnervingly calm. Actual planets, with atmospheric pressures that would crush most of us, or radiation levels that would cook our genetic material in seconds, or gravity that would flatten our internal organs into interesting new shapes. Surely they're using specialized equipment, said Fleet Commander Pexlat, the gelatinous commander of the formidable flotilla of Fricks. Remotely operated vessels, or they send in live troops. Intelligence Director Quinthar's voice was so flat it could have been used as a spirit level. Humans, in person. They call it hostile environment training. The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint bubbling from Fleet Commander Pexlat's respiratory sac. Show me the footage again, General Vexathon said quietly. The holotable flickered to life, displaying a barren, rocky landscape. The gravity readings at the bottom of the screen showed 2.3 standard Gs. The atmospheric composition was primarily nitrogen and oxygen, but with toxic levels of volcanic gases. Temperature 42 degrees C in the shade. And there was no shade. A squad of humans jogged across this hellscape, wearing what appeared to be fairly standard combat gear. Not the environmental suits one might expect. Not the heavy-duty protection that any rational species would demand. Just clothes, tactical vests, helmets. They carried weapons and equipment that looked almost laughably simple compared to Alliance standard issue. This can't be right, muttered Grand Marshal Icthalavarine, her feathers ruffling in agitation. Those are just fabric garments. Where are their atmospheric processors, their gravity compensators? They don't use them, said Quinthar. That's the point of the exercise. They're training to function in environments that would kill most species outright. But why? Asked Supreme Commander Huzcut, antennae twitching frantically. What strategic advantage could possibly justify? Because they're insane, interrupted Vexathon, leaning back from the table. This is the same species that invented something called recreational skydiving, where they jump from perfectly functional aircraft for fun. The same species where some individuals voluntarily climb frozen mountains without survival gear as a hobby. The same species that has sports where the explicit goal is to concuss each other. To be fair, offered Admiral Kelshara, they do wear helmets for that last one. Oh, well, that makes it completely reasonable then, snapped Vexathon, all 6 of his eyes rolling simultaneously. Meanwhile, on what humans classified as a moderately challenging training world designated PT-117, Master Sergeant Dmitry Volkov was growing increasingly irritated with Private First Class Owen Walsh. Walsh, if you complain about the heat one more time, I swear I'll make you carry Lieutenant Nakamura's pack too. But Sarge, it's like 1,000 degrees out here. It's 108 Fahrenheit, Walsh. That's practically spring break weather. Lieutenant Nakamura suppressed a smile. Be gentle with him, Master Sergeant. He's from Seattle. Seattle, sir? Is that some kind of cryogenic human storage facility? Volkov asked with mock seriousness. Feels like it sometimes, Walsh muttered, adjusting his pack. I'm just saying, this place is ridiculous. The air tastes like rotten eggs. I weigh about 300 pounds with this gravity, and I'm pretty sure I saw a rock melt earlier. That's the spirit, Walsh. Volkov clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make the private stumble. Embrace the suck. This is paradise compared to where the Force Recon Marines train. Captain Olivia Bennett, who had been silently monitoring her squad's vitals on her wrist display, looked up. Master Sergeant, I'm detecting elevated core temperatures across the squad. Let's take 5 and hydrate. Volkov nodded sharply. You heard the captain. 5 minutes, water break. Remember your electrolyte tablets. The squad gratefully sank to the ground, pulling canteens from their packs. The rocky landscape around them shimmered with heat haze, and in the distance, a volcano belched a plume of ash into the already hazy sky. Ma'am, said Specialist Takahashi, addressing Captain Bennett. I've been meaning to ask, why are we doing live-fire exercises on this particular hellhole? Wouldn't a sim be more efficient? Bennett took a long drink from her canteen before answering. 2 reasons, Specialist. First, no simulation can replicate the psychological factors of knowing you're actually on a world that wants to kill you. Your brain knows the difference between real danger and pretend danger. And the second reason? Asked Lieutenant Nakamura. Bennett's face broke into a rare grin. Because according to intelligence, when the Galactic Alliance found out we do this, their entire high command collectively shit themselves. The squad erupted in laughter. You're kidding, gasped Walsh. Not at all. Apparently most spacefaring species evolve on worlds with very specific parameters. Narrow bands of gravity, temperature, atmospheric composition. We're one of the few species whose homeworld is already what they'd consider extremely variable. Earth is a death world? Nakamura sounded incredulous. By their standards. Parts of it, absolutely. The Sahara would kill most Phyrexians in hours. The Mariana Trench would implode in ardation. Even our normal atmospheric pressure is uncomfortable for several Alliance species. Walsh looked thoughtful, which was an unusual expression for him. So we're basically space orcs. Space what? Asked Volkov. You know, from old fantasy games? The big tough guys who can survive anything and scare the hell out of everyone else? Walsh grinned. We're the monsters. That's a disturbing way to look at it, Private, said Captain Bennett, but she was smiling. And yet, not entirely inaccurate. Now drink your water. Breaks over in 2 minutes, and we've got 5 clicks to cover before sunset. Which sunset? Groaned Walsh. This planet has 3 suns. The big one, smartass, replied Volkov. The one that when it goes down, the temperature drops to -20. So I suggest you get moving unless you want to find out if your tears can freeze to your face. Back at the Galactic Alliance High Command, the emergency session had devolved into something resembling panic. We need to reconsider the defensive pact, insisted Grand Marshal Ikthalavarine. If the humans decide to turn against the Alliance, they won't, said Admiral Kelshara firmly. They've been reliable allies for over 3 standard cycles. You don't train on death worlds if you're planning to sit around signing trade agreements forever, countered Supreme Commander Heskett. They're preparing for something. Intelligence Director Quinthar cleared his throat. If I may, there's more to the report. Our agents have discovered that this type of training isn't limited to their military forces. What do you mean? Asked Vexathon slowly. They have civilian activities called extreme sports, where they deliberately put themselves in mortal danger for entertainment. The holotable flickered again, showing a montage of humans engaging in various activities, climbing sheer rock faces without safety equipment, diving into ocean depths with minimal protection, hurling themselves off cliffs with only fabric wings, racing wheeled vehicles at lethal speeds. By the 7 moons, whispered Brigadier Zorlak. They're all insane. Not insane, corrected Quinthar. Just human. Their psychological profiles indicate they actively seek out challenge and risk. It appears to be an evolutionary adaptation that drove them to explore and adapt to the varied environments of their homeworld. So what you're saying, said Fleet Commander Pexlot, bubbling anxiously, is that their entire species evolved specifically to do things that would kill any reasonable life form? That's one interpretation, admitted Quinthar. General Vexathon stood abruptly. We need to revise our strategic assessments immediately. If these humans consider toxic volcanic wastelands to be training grounds, I don't want to know what they consider actual combat conditions. As the human squad crested a ridge of razor-sharp volcanic rock, Private Walsh let out a low whistle. Before them stretched a vast plain of what appeared to be glass, shimmering with heat distortion. What the hell is that? He asked. Captain Bennett consulted her datapad. Silicon dioxide. Superheated by periodic volcanic activity and then rapidly cooled. Essentially, it's a natural glass field. We're crossing that? Lieutenant Nakamura asked, eyebrows raised. We are, confirmed Bennett. Intelligence reports indicate several Alliance species have silicon-based biology. Understanding how to navigate and combat in this type of environment could be crucial. Plus, added Master Sergeant Volkov with a grin, it'll look badass in the training videos we send back to command. There it is, muttered Walsh. The real reason. Captain Bennett surveyed the glass plane thoughtfully. The surface will be unstable and potentially razor-sharp. We'll need to modify our approach. Specialist Takahashi, called Volkov. Break out the adaptive footwear. Takahashi unshouldered his pack and began distributing what looked like flexible overshoes with unusual treads. These were designed based on studying mountain goats on Earth, explained Captain Bennett. The material continuously adapts to the surface, providing optimal grip while distributing weight to prevent breaking through fragile terrain. You're telling me we're crossing a field of razor-sharp glass wearing goat shoes? Walsh asked incredulously. Got a better idea, Private? Challenged Volkov. Walsh considered for a moment. No, Master Sergeant. Goat shoes it is. As they prepared their equipment, Lieutenant Nakamura moved closer to Captain Bennett. Ma'am, is it true what you said earlier about Alliance Command's reaction to our training? Bennett nodded, her expression serious. It wasn't supposed to be common knowledge, but yes. Our intelligence indicates they're completely baffled by our approach to hostile environment training. That could be strategically valuable, mused Nakamura. It already is. Their tactical doctrines assume no species would willingly operate in environments like this. It's a blind spot we can exploit if necessary. You don't sound entirely comfortable with that, Captain. Bennett sighed. I'm not. We joined the Alliance in good faith. Using their biological limitations against them feels unsporting. With respect, ma'am, it's not about being sporting. It's about being prepared. I know, Lieutenant, but there's a fine line between preparation and intimidation. Their conversation was interrupted by Volkov's booming voice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Glassfield 101 begins now. Single file, 3-meter spacing. If the person in front of you starts sinking, do not try to pull them out. Mark the location and go around. Any questions? Walsh raised his hand. Yeah, what happens if we fall through? Volkov smiled unpleasantly. Then you'd better hope your medical insurance is paid up, Private. The glass can be sharp enough to cut through standard-issue boots. Reassuring as always, Master Sergeant, muttered Walsh. Don't worry, said Takahashi, patting the medkit on his belt. I've got synthetic clotting agents that would make a hemophiliac feel invincible. That's not actually making me feel better, replied Walsh. Captain Bennett stepped forward. I'll take point. Lieutenant, you're on rear guard. Let's move. As the squad began carefully making their way onto the glass field, none of them noticed the small, cloaked observation drone hovering at the edge of visual range, transmitting everything back to an increasingly horrified Galactic Alliance High Command. They're walking across natural silicon crystal formations, on foot. Grand Marshal Ichthalavirine's voice was faint with shock. Do they not understand that a single misstep could sever an artery? Oh, they understand, said Intelligence Director Quinthar, analyzing the live feed. Notice their careful movement patterns and specialized footwear. This is a calculated risk, not ignorance. General Vexathon leaned forward, all 6 eyes narrowed in concentration. What's the purpose of this exercise? The glass fields aren't strategically valuable. Unless, said Admiral Kelshara slowly, they're considering operations against the Tel'Khazari or other silicon-based alliance members. A disturbed murmur ran through the command chamber. That's paranoid thinking, objected Fleet Commander Pexlat. The humans have shown no hostility toward the Tel'Khazari. In fact, they've established several joint research initiatives. Perhaps, said Supreme Commander Hizkit. This is simply their way. They prepare for all possibilities, no matter how unlikely. Which is precisely what makes them dangerous, countered Vexathon. A species that trains for combat in environments that would kill most of us without specialized equipment. They don't think like we do. Quinthar made a gesture, and the holodisplay zoomed in on Captain Bennett. The human officer was consulting some kind of device on her wrist, completely calm despite standing on a surface that would terrify most Alliance soldiers. Their commanding officer's vital signs show elevated stress markers, but nothing extreme, noted Quinthar. Heart rate, respiration, cortisol levels, all within normal human parameters for light exertion. Light exertion? Repeated Brigadier Zorlak incredulously. They're traversing a field of natural razors. To them, this appears to be a routine training exercise, said Quinthar. According to our intelligence, they categorize this planet as a moderate challenge environment. And what? Asked Vexathon with trepidation. Do they consider a severe challenge? Quinthar hesitated before answering. Planets with atmospheric pressure exceeding 20 standard units. Gravity wells approaching 4 times galactic standard. Environments with ambient radiation levels that would sterilize most species within minutes. The command chamber fell silent again. We need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about human military capability, said Admiral Kelshara finally. Our strategic assessments have been inadequate. The sun was setting by the time the human squad reached the other side of the glass field. Despite the treacherous terrain, they had crossed without serious incident. Private Walsh had a minor cut on his hand from when he'd instinctively reached down to catch his balance, but Specialist Takahashi had treated it within seconds. Okay, Glassfield, officially not fun, announced Walsh as they regrouped on solid ground. Could be worse, said Lieutenant Nakamura, scanning the horizon with compact binoculars. At least it wasn't the acid lakes they have on the northern continent. Don't give command any ideas, groaned Walsh. Captain Bennett was examining her datapad. We'll make camp here for the night. The temperature's about to plummet, and we don't want to be moving when it does. You heard the captain, barked Master Sergeant Volkov. Defensive perimeter, standard formation. Takahashi, Walsh, you're on first watch. Lieutenant, coordinates for tomorrow's route? Nakamura nodded, pulling up a holographic map. We'll head east at dawn, toward the foothills. There's a series of caves that intelligence wants us to investigate. What kind of caves? Asked Walsh suspiciously. The kind with unknown alien microorganisms that might be valuable for medical research, replied Nakamura. Or that might dissolve our faces, muttered Walsh. That's why we have you go in first, Private, said Volkov with a straight face. As the squad set up their shelters, lightweight but surprisingly robust structures designed to withstand the planet's extreme temperature fluctuations, Captain Bennett found herself staring up at the emerging stars. The planet's 3 suns were setting in sequence, creating a spectacular light show as they disappeared below the horizon. Beautiful, isn't it? Said Lieutenant Nakamura, joining her. It is, agreed Bennett. Hard to believe something so hostile can be so stunning. Kind of like humanity, mused Nakamura. Maybe that's why we're drawn to places like this. We recognize something of ourselves. Bennett looked at him curiously. That's almost philosophical, Lieutenant. Near-death experiences on alien worlds tend to bring that out in me, he replied with a small smile. We're not in danger here, said Bennett. Not really. Every aspect of this mission has been meticulously planned. The risks are calculated. Tell that to Walsh's hand. Minor injuries are expected. That's part of the training. And that's exactly what makes us different, said Nakamura. We accept pain and risk as teaching tools. From what I understand, most Alliance species would consider that barbaric. Bennett was silent for a moment. Maybe they're right. Or maybe they're just different. Evolution took them down one path, us down another. Neither is wrong, just adapted to different challenges. The captain nodded slowly. Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow's cave expedition will test those adaptations even further. In the Galactic Alliance High Command chamber, the mood had shifted from panic to grim determination. We need to understand them better, declared General Vexathon. Not just their capabilities, but their thinking. I've been analyzing their historical military doctrines, offered Intelligence Director Quinthar. They have a concept called force multiplication, using training, technology, and tactics to make each soldier exponentially more effective. Many species have similar concepts, said Fleet Commander Pexlat. Yes, but humans take it to extremes. They don't just want their forces to be effective. They want each individual soldier to be adaptable to any combat environment. Their training philosophy emphasizes functioning in suboptimal conditions as a standard, not an emergency procedure. Admiral Kelshara manipulated the holotable controls, bringing up historical images of human conflicts from before their space age. Look at their history. They fought wars in frozen wastelands, scorching deserts, tropical jungles, mountain ranges, and open oceans, all on their homeworld. They've been preparing for environments like PT-117 since before they had spaceflight. Which raises the question, said Grand Marshal Ichthylavirine, what are they preparing for now? An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. We should ask them, said Brigadier Zorlak suddenly. The other generals stared at him. What? He said defensively, his crystalline structure catching the light. We're allies. Instead of spying on them and jumping to paranoid conclusions, why not simply inquire about their training philosophy? That's... General Vexathon began, then stopped. Actually, that's not an unreasonable suggestion. I'll make arrangements for a diplomatic inquiry, said Admiral Kelshara. But in the meantime, I recommend we continue monitoring this training exercise. The more we understand about human capabilities, the better we can assess our alliance. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees Celsius by the time the observation drone detected movement near the human camp. It adjusted its sensors, zooming in on a figure emerging from one of the shelters. Private Walsh, bundled in thermal gear, was making his way carefully to a position about 20 meters from the camp perimeter. He glanced around furtively, then produced a small object from his pocket. The drone's audio sensors picked up the faint click of a lighter, followed by the unmistakable smell of tobacco. Didn't think anyone still smoked those things, came a voice, causing Walsh to nearly jump out of his skin. Specialist Takahashi emerged from the shadows, looking amused. Jesus, Takahashi, don't sneak up on a man like that. hissed Walsh, clutching his cigarette. And yeah, I know it's archaic, but it helps with the stress. Your lungs, your choice, said Takahashi, sitting down on a nearby rock. Though I'm pretty sure the ambient volcanic gases are probably worse for you than that cigarette. Comforting thought, muttered Walsh. After a moment, he offered the pack to Takahashi, who shook his head. Not my vice. I prefer good old-fashioned alcohol poisoning when we get back to base. Walsh chuckled. To each their own slow suicide, huh? They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, looking out at the alien landscape. The glass field they had crossed earlier glittered in the starlight, beautiful and deadly. You ever wonder what we're really doing out here? Asked Walsh suddenly. Training to fight in hostile environments. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, but hostile for who? Most of the Alliance species would die just setting foot on this planet without serious environmental gear. Who are we preparing to fight? Takahashi was quiet for a moment. Maybe it's not about who we're fighting. Maybe it's about proving what we can do. Showing off, you mean? Not exactly. Proving our worth. Humans are the newcomers to the Galactic Alliance. We don't have the ancient histories or advanced technologies that some of the other species boast. But we have this. Adaptability. Resilience. So we're the tough guys of space? Walsh took a long drag of his cigarette. Space orcs, like I said earlier. If that helps you conceptualize it, sure. Takahashi shrugged. Though personally, I prefer to think of us as the space honey badgers. Walsh snorted. Vicious, fearless, and too stubborn to know when to quit? Exactly. Takahashi stood up, stretching. We should get back. Your watch ended 10 minutes ago, and Volkov will have your hide if he catches you smoking. Roger that. Walsh stubbed out his cigarette carefully and buried the butt. Can't leave trash on an alien death world. That would be irresponsible. As they walked back to camp, the observation drone followed silently, recording everything. The recordings from the observation drone caused yet another stir in the High Command chamber. They call themselves Space Honey Badgers? Asked Supreme Commander Hisket, antennae twitching in confusion. It's a reference to an Earth predator known for its ferocity and ability to withstand extreme conditions, explained Intelligence Director Quinthar. They're actively embracing their perceived role as biological outliers. What I find more concerning, said General Vexathan, is their casual attitude toward the environment. They're treating a planet that would kill most sapient species as merely inconvenient. And did you notice, added Grand Marshal Ichthala that even their most junior soldiers are questioning the strategic purpose of their training? They are aware of how their capabilities compare to Alliance standards. The diplomatic inquiry has been arranged, announced Admiral Kelshara. A representative from the Human Interstellar Defense Force will address the Alliance Council in 2 standard cycles. 2 cycles, repeated Fleet Commander Pexlot incredulously. The humans could conquer half the death worlds in the galaxy by then. They're not going to conquer anything, said Kelshara firmly. They're our allies. Allies who train to fight in environments where we can't even survive, muttered Brigadier Zorlak. Which could be a tremendous asset in joint operations, countered Kelshara. Imagine being able to establish forward bases on planets our enemies would never expect. Or imagine them establishing bases on worlds where we couldn't possibly follow, said Vexathon darkly. The debate continued well into the night cycle, with the Alliance generals split between those who saw human adaptability as a potential threat and those who recognized its strategic value to the Alliance as a whole. Dawn on PT-117 brought new challenges for the human squad. The temperature had risen rapidly with the appearance of the first sun, and by the time the second sun crested the horizon, it was already 30 degrees Celsius and climbing. Rise and shine, campers, bellowed Master Sergeant Volkov, moving through the small encampment. Beautiful day for a cave expedition. Walsh emerged from his shelter, bleary-eyed. Is he always this cheerful in the morning, or is it just to torment us specifically? Both, replied Takahashi, already fully dressed and packing his medical kit. Coffee's by the thermal unit. The squad prepared quickly, consuming ration packs and caffeinated beverages as they broke down their camp. Captain Bennett and Lieutenant Nakamura were studying a 3-dimensional holographic map projected from Bennett's datapad. The cave system extends at least 2 kilometers into the mountain, Bennett was saying. Initial drone reconnaissance shows multiple chambers, some with unusual crystalline formations. Any signs of the microorganisms intelligence is interested in? Asked Nakamura. Inconclusive. The drones detected organic compounds but couldn't determine if they're currently active life forms or fossilized remains. So we're going in blind, Nakamura summarized. Not completely blind. Bennett gestured to the map. We have structural data and atmospheric readings. The air is breathable, though with higher CO2 levels than we'd like. We'll use rebreathers as a precaution. What about seismic activity? This whole region is volcanically active. Monitoring stations have been in place for the past 3 weeks. There's been nothing above a 2.0 on the Richter scale, all well below the threshold for concern. Nakamura nodded, looking somewhat reassured. All right. I'll brief the team on cave operation protocols. Within the hour, the squad was making its way toward the foothills, where dark openings in the rocky terrain marked the entrances to the cave system. The 3 suns beat down mercilessly, and the temperature had already climbed to 38 degrees. Enjoy the heat while it lasts, advised Volkov as they approached the cave entrance. It'll be significantly cooler underground. Finally, some good news, muttered Walsh. The cave mouth was imposing, a jagged tear in the side of a mountain, like a wound in the landscape. Captain Bennett activated a powerful handheld light and led the way inside. The temperature dropped immediately, and the squad found themselves in a natural antechamber with a ceiling that soared at least 30 meters above their heads. Helmets on, rebreathers activated, ordered Bennett. Standard formation. I'll take point, Master Sergeant, on rear guard. The interior of the cave was surprisingly beautiful. The walls glittered with embedded crystals that reflected their lights in dazzling patterns. As they moved deeper, the passage narrowed before opening into a vast chamber filled with stalactites and stalagmites, some of which had joined to form massive columns. This is incredible, breathed Lieutenant Nakamura, his voice slightly distorted by the rebreather. Focus, Lieutenant, reminded Bennett, though there was no real rebuke in her tone. Takahashi, start collecting samples. Walsh, perimeter security. Security against what? Asked Walsh, nevertheless readying his weapon. Cave bats. Against whatever caused that, said Bennett, pointing her light at the far wall of the chamber. The squad fell silent as they observed what appeared to be claw marks, massive gouges in the solid rock, each groove deep enough to fit a human arm. Those are fresh, said Volkov quietly, moving forward to examine them. No mineral deposits, no weathering. So whatever made them is still around, concluded Nakamura. Most likely, agreed Bennett, which is why we maintain proper security protocols. Takahashi, how long do you need for sample collection? The specialist was already working, carefully scraping material from various surfaces into collection vials. 10 minutes for the basic set. Longer if you want comprehensive coverage. Basic set will do. We're not lingering. As Takahashi worked, Walsh moved restlessly around the perimeter of the chamber, his light sweeping across the numerous smaller passages that branched off from the main chamber. Hey, Captain, he called. I think I found something. The team converged on Walsh's position, where he was examining what appeared to be a smooth depression in the rocky floor, almost like a nest. It's warm, he said, holding his hand just above the surface. Like really warm. Captain Bennett knelt to examine it more closely. Thermal imaging, she ordered, and Nakamura handed her a specialized scanner. The image that appeared on the small screen confirmed Walsh's observation. The depression was significantly warmer than the surrounding rock, by nearly 20 degrees. Something's been sleeping here, said Volkov. Something big. And the ambient temperature suggests it left recently, added Bennett, standing up. Takahashi, status on those samples? Nearly done, Captain. Expedite. We're leaving in 2 minutes. No sooner had she spoken than a low rumble echoed through the chamber, not from any of the passages, but from above. The squad looked up simultaneously to see what they had missed in their initial survey, an opening in the ceiling, at least 10 meters across, leading to an upper level of the cave system. And something was moving within it. Nobody move, whispered Bennett. No sudden movements, no loud noises. The creature that emerged from the ceiling opening defied easy description. It was massive, easily the size of a small shuttlecraft, with a segmented body that seemed to be composed of both insectoid and reptilian features. Multiple limbs ended in wicked claws that matched the gouges they had observed. Its head housed compound eyes that glittered in the light of their headlamps, and a complex arrangement of mandibles clicked rhythmically. Holy shit, breathed Walsh, his voice barely audible even through the comm system. The creature paused, suspended from the ceiling by several of its limbs, its head swiveling as it surveyed the chamber. It's reacting to our lights, murmured Nakamura. Visual hunter. On my mark, said Bennett calmly. We're going to back toward the passage we came through. Very slowly, no sudden movements. Walsh, Volkov, be prepared to provide covering fire if necessary. Roger that, replied Volkov, his voice steady. They began their careful retreat, moving in perfect synchronization. The creature continued to watch them, its mandibles clicking faster now, but it made no move to attack. They were halfway to the passage when Walsh's boot dislodged a small stone, sending it skittering across the cave floor. The creature's reaction was immediate and terrifying. It dropped from the ceiling with surprising grace for something so large, landing on the cave floor with an impact that sent tremors through the ground. A sound somewhere between a screech and a roar emerged from its mandibles. "Run!" shouted Bennett. "Defensive retreat pattern Alpha!" The squad broke into coordinated movement, Walsh and Volkov taking up rear positions and firing short, controlled bursts from their weapons as Bennett, Nakamura, and Takahashi made for the passage. The creature's exoskeleton appeared to absorb most of the impacts, but the flashes and noise seemed to confuse it momentarily. That moment was all they needed. The squad made it to the passage, which was too narrow for the creature to follow quickly. They could hear it scrabbling at the entrance as they ran, its frustrated roars echoing through the cave system. "Don't stop!" called Bennett as they sprinted through the twisting passage. "It knows these caves better than we do. There could be other entrances." They emerged into the harsh sunlight minutes later, breathing hard despite their physical conditioning. Without being ordered, they immediately formed a defensive perimeter around the cave entrance, weapons ready. "Everyone accounted for?" demanded Bennett, doing a visual check herself. "All present," confirmed Volkov. "No injuries." "Takahashi, did you secure those samples?" The specialist patted his collection case with a grin. "Yes, ma'am. All 17 vials, safely stored." "That's a first contact situation I could have done without," muttered Walsh, still watching the cave entrance nervously. "Actually," said Nakamura, consulting his data pad, "it's not first contact. That species is documented in the xenobiology database, classified as a silicon-based apex predator, indigenous to volcanic environments. Apparently, a survey team encountered one about 20 years ago." "Let me guess," said Walsh. "The survey team was human?" "Naturally," replied Nakamura with a small smile. "Who else would be crazy enough to go into those caves?" Captain Bennett checked her chronometer. "We need to move. Our extraction point is still 10 clicks from here, and I'd rather not be in the open when night falls." "You think that thing can follow us outside the caves?" asked Walsh, casting another nervous glance at the dark opening. "I have no idea what its environmental tolerances are," replied Bennett. "And I don't intend to find out. Move out. Standard patrol formation." As they put distance between themselves and the caves, the squad's comm units crackled with an incoming transmission. "Grizzly Squad, this is home base." "Come in, over." The voice belonged to Colonel Reeves, their mission commander, who was safely aboard the orbiting support vessel. "Home base, this is Grizzly Actual," responded Bennett. "We read you. Over." "Captain, be advised we're picking up some unusual activity in your sector. Looks like someone's watching you." The squad instinctively tightened their formation, scanning their surroundings. "Hostiles?" asked Bennett sharply. "Negative. We've identified a cloaked observation drone of Galactic Alliance design, Ardatian manufacture, if our sensors are correct." Bennett exchanged glances with Lieutenant Nakamura. "Understood. Should we acknowledge or ignore?" There was a pause before Colonel Reeves responded. "Command says ignore for now. Complete your mission as planned. They're handling the diplomatic side." "Roger that. Grizzly Actual out." Bennett switched to the squad's private channel. "Well, it seems we have an audience." "The Alliance is spying on us?" Walsh sounded incredulous. "Aren't they supposed to be our allies?" "It's not spying if they're doing it this badly," said Volkov with a snort. "Our sensors picked them up from orbit. If they wanted to spy effectively, they would have been more subtle." "It's reconnaissance," corrected Nakamura. "They're trying to understand our capabilities." "And probably questioning our sanity," added Takahashi. Bennett nodded. "Which means we continue as planned. If the Alliance is watching, let's give them a show." The observation drone's transmissions were causing an uproar in the Galactic Alliance High Command chamber. "They encountered a magma stalker and treated it like a minor inconvenience," exclaimed Brigadier Zorlak. "Do you have any idea how many Alliance survey teams have been wiped out by those creatures?" 27, supplied Intelligence Director Quinthar helpfully, "with a total casualty count of 112 personnel. And these humans just scared it off with small arms fire and ran away," said Fleet Commander Peckslot, his gelatinous form quivering with what might have been admiration or terror. "Not ran away," corrected General Vexathon. "Executed a tactical withdrawal. There's a difference." "The bigger question," interjected Admiral Kelshara, "is why weren't we informed of this training exercise in advance? The planet is within Alliance space. Protocol dictates. The humans filed the appropriate notices, interrupted Quinthar. 6 standard weeks ago, the exercise was classified as routine environmental adaptation training and approved by the Alliance Military Coordination Office. Routine, repeated Grand Marshal Icthalavarine incredulously. There is nothing routine about sending unaugmented biological entities into a magma stalker den. By human standards there is, insisted Quinthar. I've been reviewing their training protocols. This is considered a moderate-risk exercise for their special operations units. The chamber fell silent as the generals contemplated this information. They know we're watching them now, said Supreme Commander Hesket finally. Our drone's stealth systems are inadequate against their detection capabilities. I don't think they care, replied Vexathon slowly. In fact, I suspect they're putting on a show for our benefit. To what end? Asked Brigadier Zorlak. Deterrence, suggested Admiral Kelshara. They're demonstrating capabilities that would make any species think twice about crossing them. Or invitation, countered Vexathon, showing us what valuable allies they can be. Either way, said Intelligence Director Quinthar, I suggest we continue observation. Their extraction isn't scheduled for another 26 standard hours, and their planned route takes them through several more interesting environments. The human squad had been marching for 3 hours across an increasingly desolate landscape. The 3 suns beat down mercilessly, and the temperature had climbed to nearly 50 degrees. The terrain had changed from rocky volcanic fields to what appeared to be a vast salt flat, a blindingly white expanse that reflected the sunlight with painful intensity. This is ridiculous, muttered Walsh, his face covered by a protective wrap that left only his eyes exposed. I can feel my eyeballs cooking even with the polarized lenses. Stop complaining, replied Volkov. At least salt flats are easy to traverse. No hidden sinkholes, no predators, no razor-sharp glass. No, just heat stroke, dehydration, and permanent retinal damage, countered Walsh cheerfully. Captain Bennett, who had been consulting her navigation system, raised a hand to halt the squad. We've got an obstacle ahead. The salt flat ends about 2 clicks from here, and we'll be entering the thermal vent fields. Of course we are, sighed Walsh, because a normal hike would be too boring. The vents release superheated steam and various gases, continued Bennett, ignoring the interruption. Visibility will be poor and the ground will be unstable in places. We'll need to use thermal imaging to identify safe paths. What about respirators? Asked Takahashi, ever mindful of medical concerns. Full face protection, confirmed Bennett. The gas composition includes sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, among other irritants. Wonderful, muttered Walsh. We're literally walking through hell. Not literally, Private, corrected Lieutenant Nakamura with a small smile. Hell would be much worse. This is merely purgatory. Thanks for the theological clarification, sir. As they approached the edge of the salt flat, the landscape changed dramatically. The pristine white surface gave way to dark volcanic soil interspersed with cracks and fissures from which steam rose continuously. The air shimmered with heat distortion, and the acrid smell of sulfur permeated everything. Masks on, ordered Bennett, fitting her own respirator into place. And switch to thermal imaging. With their enhanced vision, the squad could see the heat signatures of the various vents scattered across the field, some glowing bright orange where the steam was hottest, others a more moderate yellow or green. They began picking their way carefully through the maze of hazards, maintaining their formation despite the challenging terrain. Step exactly where I step, warned Volkov, who was now on point. The crust can be thin in places. The warning proved prescient when minutes later Specialist Takahashi's foot broke through the surface, plunging into what appeared to be mud beneath. He pulled back quickly, but not before his boot was coated in a dark viscous substance. What is this stuff? He asked, examining the material with professional curiosity. Mineral-rich mud, said Bennett after a quick scan. High sulfur content, extremely acidic. Don't let it stay on your equipment. Takahashi nodded, using a specialized wipe to clean his boot before the acid could damage the material. They continued their careful progress for another hour, navigating the treacherous terrain with practiced skill. Occasionally, one of the vents would erupt with greater force, sending a plume of steam and gas high into the air with a sound like a giant kettle boiling over. How much farther to the extraction point? Asked Walsh during a brief water break. Despite the external heat, their climate-controlled uniforms kept their core temperatures within acceptable ranges, but hydration was still a constant concern. About 7 clicks, replied Bennett. We'll clear the vent fields in another 2, Then we have a relatively straight shot across the highland plateau. Any more exciting wildlife we should know about? Asked Walsh. Bennett consulted her datapad. Nothing large. There are some indigenous microorganisms that have evolved to thrive in the vents, but nothing that poses a threat to us. I bet the Alliance observers are having a field day with this, remarked Nakamura. Most of their environmental suits couldn't handle these conditions for more than an hour or two. Their loss, said Volkov with a grin visible even behind his respirator. They're missing out on all the fun. In the Galactic Alliance High Command Chamber, the observation continued with growing astonishment. They're walking through a thermal field without environmental vehicles, said Grand Marshal Ichthala Virene, her feathers now permanently ruffled with stress. Do they not understand the risks of ground collapse, of toxic gas exposure, of acid burns? Oh, they understand, said Intelligence Director Quinthar, who was beginning to sound almost admiring. Notice their precautions, specialized footwear, respirators, thermal imaging. They're mitigating the risks through training and equipment rather than avoiding the environment entirely. It's insanity, insisted Brigadier Zorlak. It's adaptability, countered Admiral Kelshara. Something our military doctrines could learn from. General Vexathon had been unusually quiet, studying the footage with all 6 eyes narrowed in concentration. What happens when they encounter a species that can match this adaptability? He asked finally. Or exceed it? The question hung in the air, unanswered. The diplomatic representative will be arriving tomorrow, reminded Admiral Kelshara. We can pose these questions directly. And what if we don't like their answers? Asked Supreme Commander Huskat. Then we reevaluate our alliance, said Vexathon simply. But I suspect their answers will surprise us. These humans, they don't think like we do. As the human squad cleared the thermal vent fields, a new challenge presented itself. The highland plateau that Captain Bennett had described was separated from their current position by a steep cliff face, nearly 30 meters of vertical rock that would need to be climbed. You have got to be kidding me, groaned Walsh, staring up at the imposing wall. Please tell me we're going around this. Negative, replied Bennett. Going around would add 6 hours to our journey time. We climb. Standard ascending protocol, added Volkov, already unpacking climbing gear from his pack. Nothing we haven't done 100 times in training. Yeah, but usually not after hiking through volcanic hellscapes for 8 hours, muttered Walsh. Despite his complaints, Walsh was actually an accomplished climber, and soon the entire squad was making steady progress up the cliff face. They used minimal equipment, just enough to ensure safety without relying too heavily on technology that might fail in the harsh environment. You know, said Takahashi as they paused on a narrow ledge halfway up. My grandfather used to climb mountains back on Earth. Free climbing, they called it. No ropes, no safety gear. Your grandfather was insane, replied Walsh, carefully testing a handhold before trusting his weight to it. He said it was about connecting with the mountain, feeling the rock under your fingers, trusting your own strength and judgment. I'll stick with safety lines, thanks, said Walsh, though there was respect in his voice. They reached the top without incident, pulling themselves onto the relatively flat surface of the plateau. The view was spectacular. They could see for kilometers in every direction, across the varied and hostile landscape they had traversed. Take 5, ordered Bennett. Hydrate and check your equipment. As the squad rested briefly, Lieutenant Nakamura approached the captain. Ma'am, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about showing the Alliance what we can do. What about it? Don't you think it might backfire? Make them fear us rather than value us as allies? Bennett considered this. It's a fine line, Lieutenant. But in my experience, respect often requires a healthy dose of awe. The Alliance needs to understand what humans bring to the table. Even if what we bring scares them? Especially then. Bennett's expression was serious behind her protective gear. The galaxy is full of threats the Alliance hasn't even encountered yet. Someday, they might be grateful to have allies who can walk through fire. Their conversation was interrupted by Volkov. Captain, we've got incoming. Aerial vehicle approaching fast from the northeast. The squad immediately went on alert, taking up defensive positions despite being in the open. Alliance? Asked Bennett sharply. Volkov shook his head. Negative. Unknown configuration. Definitely not Alliance standard design. A sleek, dart-like craft appeared on the horizon, moving at impressive speed. It decelerated rapidly as it approached their position, coming to hover about 50 meters away and 10 meters above the plateau. No visible weapons, noted Nakamura, observing through binoculars. But that doesn't mean much with advanced tech. Hold positions, ordered Bennett. No hostile actions unless provoked. The craft descended slowly, landing with surprising grace for something its size. A seam appeared in its metallic surface, widening into a doorway from which emerged a single figure. The alien was tall and slender, with 4 arms and a body covered in what appeared to be fine scales that shimmered with an iridescent quality. Its head was elongated, with large, compound eyes that reflected the sunlight in rainbow patterns. "That's a Vexari," murmured Takahashi. "They're not even members of the Alliance. What's one doing here?" The alien approached with careful, measured steps, showing its empty hands in what was clearly a universal gesture of peace. When it spoke, a translator device at its throat converted its native clicks and whistles into standard galactic common. "Greetings, humans. I am Observer Tiklax of the Vexari Conclave. I apologize for interrupting your activities." Captain Bennett stepped forward, removing her respirator now that they were clear of the thermal vents. "Captain Olivia Bennett, Human Interstellar Defense Force. This is a designated training exercise on an approved world. May I ask the purpose of your visit, Observer?" The Vexari's head tilted slightly in what might have been amusement. "The same as your Alliance observers, Captain. Curiosity. The Conclave has been monitoring your species with great interest." "You've been watching us?" asked Bennett, her expression neutral. "For some time, yes. Your methods are unorthodox by galactic standards." "We prefer innovative," replied Bennett with a slight smile. The Vexari made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. Most species would consider this planet uninhabitable without significant technological intervention. Yet here you are, traversing it with minimal support equipment." "It's just training," said Bennett modestly. "We believe in preparing for all contingencies." "A prudent approach." Observer Tiklax glanced around at the hostile landscape. "The Vexari Conclave values adaptability highly. It is why we have survived for millennia, despite being surrounded by more numerous species." "I'm familiar with your people's reputation," acknowledged Bennett. "Is that why you're here? To assess our adaptability?" "Partially." The Vexari's compound eyes seemed to glitter with something like approval. "The galaxy is changing, Captain Bennett. New threats emerge. Old alliances shift. The Conclave believes that species who can thrive in adversity will be valuable friends in the times to come." "Are you proposing an alliance?" asked Bennett, her tone carefully neutral despite the diplomatic bombshell the alien had just dropped. "Merely opening a dialogue," replied Tiklax. "Your current allies watch you with fear and fascination, uncertain whether you are asset or threat. The Conclave sees more clearly. We recognize kindred spirits, those who turn hostile environments to advantage." Before Bennett could respond, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Volkov. "Captain! Seismic activity! Magnitude increasing rapidly!" As if to punctuate his warning, the ground beneath their feet trembled. The plateau, seemingly solid moments before, was now shuddering with increasing violence. "Volcanic eruption imminent," reported Takahashi, checking his instruments. "The whole caldera is waking up." The Vexari observer appeared unconcerned. "A minor inconvenience. My vessel can accommodate your team if you wish to evacuate." Bennett glanced at the alien craft, then back at her squad. Making a quick decision, she shook her head. "Thank you for the offer, Observer, but this is precisely the type of scenario we train for. My team can handle it." The Vexari's head tilted again, this time in what was unmistakably respect. "As you wish, Captain. Perhaps we will speak again when your exercise is complete." With a formal gesture that might have been a salute, the alien returned to its vessel, which lifted off smoothly and accelerated away. "You just turned down an easy ride out of here," noted Nakamura, as the squad quickly prepared to move. "That wasn't the point of the exercise," replied Bennett. "We finish what we started." The plateau was now shaking continuously, and in the distance, they could see one of the dormant volcanic cones beginning to glow ominously. "Move out," ordered Bennett. "Double time to the extraction point." As the human squad broke into a disciplined run across the increasingly unstable terrain, the observation drone continued its silent vigil, transmitting everything back to an increasingly astonished Galactic Alliance High Command. The scene in the High Command chamber had descended into near chaos. "Did a Vexari observer just offer them evacuation?" demanded General Vexathon, all 6 tentacles gesticulating wildly. "And did that human captain just refuse?" "The Vexari Conclave has shown no interest in Alliance affairs for over 3 centuries, said Admiral Kelshara, her normally composed demeanor shaken. "Yet they're monitoring human training exercises?" "More concerning," interjected Intelligence Director Quinthar. is the implication that they've been watching humans for some time. Our intelligence networks detected no Vexari presence in human space. Because they're better at cloaking than we are, muttered Brigadier Zorlak. Always have been. Supreme Commander Hiskate's antennae were twitching so violently they were practically vibrating. Are we watching the beginning of a human Vexari alliance? Do you have any idea what that would mean for galactic power dynamics? It would shift the balance significantly, acknowledged Admiral Kelshara. The Vexari have technology centuries beyond our own, but their numbers are few. Humans have population, adaptability, and aggression. Together they would be formidable, finished General Vexathon grimly. Grand Marshal Icthalavirine, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. We're missing the most immediate concern. That volcano is erupting. The human squad is running toward an active pyroclastic flow. They'll be incinerated. All eyes turned back to the holodisplay, where the human squad could indeed be seen racing across the increasingly fractured plateau, as behind them, a massive plume of ash and smoke rose into the sky. Picked a hell of a time for a volcanic eruption, shouted Walsh as the squad sprinted across the plateau. The ground beneath their feet was now cracking in places, releasing ominous puffs of steam and gas. Less talking, more running, replied Volkov, bringing up the rear of their formation. Captain Bennett was on the comm with their extraction team. Nighthawk, this is Grizzly Actual. Our situation has become untenable. Requesting immediate extraction at emergency coordinates Delta. Roger that, Grizzly. Inbound, ETA 12 minutes, came the response. We may not have 12 minutes, muttered Nakamura, glancing back at the volcano, which was now throwing molten rock into the air. Then we'd better pick up the pace, replied Bennett calmly. Emergency extraction point is 2 clicks northeast, in that clearing by the ridge. As they ran, the first wave of hot ash began to overtake them, reducing visibility and making breathing difficult even through their protective gear. Masks on, full seal, ordered Bennett. They didn't slow their pace, even as the ash cloud thickened around them. Their training allowed them to maintain formation despite the near-zero visibility, each soldier keeping track of the team member ahead of them. Ground's getting unstable, called Takahashi, as a fissure opened up just meters from where he was running. Keep moving, Bennett replied. We're almost there. The extraction point was now visible through breaks in the ash cloud, a relatively flat area near the edge of the plateau, just large enough for their transport to land. As they approached, they could hear the welcome sound of engines as the Nighthawk, a sleek military transport designed for hostile environment operations, descended through the turbulent air. Final push, called Bennett as the transport touched down, its rear ramp already lowering. The squad made it to the Nighthawk just as the main pyroclastic flow reached the edge of the plateau. They charged up the ramp, which began closing even as the last of them cleared it. Everyone accounted for? Demanded the transport's crew chief as the Nighthawk lifted off. All present, confirmed Bennett, removing her protective mask. Her face was streaked with sweat and ash, but her expression was one of satisfaction. Mission complete. As the transport accelerated away from the erupting volcano, Walsh collapsed into a seat, breathing heavily. So, just another routine training exercise, huh? Pretty much, agreed Volkov with a straight face, though the volcano was a nice touch. Very realistic. The volcanic eruption wasn't part of the planned exercise, Bennett informed them, checking her datapad. That was a genuine geological event. Perfect timing, remarked Nakamura dryly. Actually it was, said Bennett. Gave us a chance to demonstrate emergency protocols under genuine stress conditions. Couldn't have planned it better. And I'm sure our Alliance observers got quite a show, added Takahashi. Not just the Alliance, Bennett reminded them. We had Vexari eyes on us too. Speaking of which, she turned to the crew chief. Any unusual vessels detected in orbit? The chief nodded. Affirmative, Captain. Command reports at least 3 non-Alliance ships maintaining position just outside scanner range. Suspected Vexari design. Interesting, murmured Bennett. Seems we've attracted quite an audience. As the Nighthawk ascended through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, leaving the erupting volcano far below, none of them noticed the small, cloaked observation drone that had followed them all the way to extraction, still faithfully transmitting everything back to the Galactic Alliance High Command. 2 days later, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Alliance Council on the neutral world of Harmonia Prime, the atmosphere was tense. Representatives from all 27 member species were present, their attention focused on the raised platform where General Vexathon and Admiral Kelshara stood alongside a single human figure. Fleet Admiral Katarina Morgan of the Human Interstellar Defense Force was an imposing presence despite her relatively small stature compared to some of the alien representatives. Her dress uniform was impeccable, adorned with medals and insignia that told the story of a long and distinguished career. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Alliance," began General Vexathon, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "We have called this special session to address concerns regarding certain military practices of our human allies." Admiral Morgan's expression remained perfectly neutral. "Specifically," continued Vexathon, "we wish to understand the purpose and intent behind human training exercises conducted in environments that would be lethal to most Alliance species." There was a murmur throughout the chamber as various representatives reacted to this statement. Admiral Kelshara stepped forward. "Before Admiral Morgan responds, I would like to present evidence gathered during one such recent exercise." The chamber's holographic system activated, displaying carefully edited highlights from the observation drone's footage. The human squad traversing the glass field, encountering the magma stalker, navigating the thermal vents, scaling the cliff face, and finally escaping the volcanic eruption. When the footage ended, the chamber was completely silent. Admiral Morgan approached the central podium calmly. "Thank you, General Vexathon, Admiral Kelshara. I appreciate the opportunity to address the Council's concerns directly." She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "What you have witnessed is indeed a standard hostile environment training exercise for our Special Operations units. The squad in question, Grizzly Squad, performed admirably under conditions that were, yes, designed to test the limits of human adaptability." "Admiral," interrupted a Phyrexian representative, his gelatinous form quivering with agitation, "what possible enemy requires such preparation? Is the Alliance itself under some threat we are unaware of?" Morgan smiled slightly. "No specific threat motivated these exercises, Representative. They are part of a training philosophy that dates back to our pre-space era. Humans believe in preparing for the unexpected by training in the most challenging environments possible." "But surely," objected a Tel'Khazari delegate, her silicon-based form glittering in the chamber's light, "such training indicates preparation for combat on worlds that would be uninhabitable to most Alliance species. This suggests either paranoia or aggressive intent." Admiral Morgan's expression remained composed. "With respect, it suggests neither. It demonstrates a core human value, adaptability. We evolved on a world with extreme environmental variation, from Arctic tundra to scorching deserts, from ocean depths to mountain peaks. Our history is defined by our ability to adapt to new challenges and environments." She gestured to the frozen image still displayed above, Captain Bennett's squad racing away from the volcanic eruption. "What you see as reckless or aggressive, we see as practical. The galaxy is vast and largely unknown. We train for extreme conditions not because we seek conflict, but because we refuse to be limited in where we can go and what we can do." There was a thoughtful silence as the representatives considered her words. "There is another matter," said General Vexathon finally. "Our observation recorded an encounter between your training squad and a representative of the Vexari Conclave. Can you explain this?" A ripple of surprise ran through the chamber. The Vexari were known but seldom seen, their advanced civilization keeping largely to themselves. Admiral Morgan nodded. "We were as surprised as you by that encounter. The Vexari have made occasional diplomatic overtures to humanity in recent years, expressing interest in our adaptability and approach to challenging environments. We have maintained friendly but limited relations with them, as we do with many non-alliance species." "Are you negotiating a separate alliance with the Conclave?" demanded Admiral Kelshara directly. "No," replied Morgan firmly. "Humanity values our place within the Galactic Alliance. We have no intention of forming competing alliances." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Though we do value being understood by our allies." The Vexari seem to grasp something about humanity that some Alliance members find concerning. That our drive to push boundaries is not aggression, but exploration. Not a threat, but an asset. Admiral Morgan stepped back from the podium slightly, her posture straight and confident. "Esteemed representatives, let me be clear. Humanity trains on what you call death worlds, not because we are preparing for war, but because we refuse to accept limitations. The same adaptability that allows us to train in hostile environments also makes us valuable allies who can go where others cannot, do what others cannot." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, of various representatives. "If that capability disturbs you, I understand. It can be unsettling to witness another species doing what you consider impossible or foolhardy. But I invite you to see it differently, as a complementary strength. The Alliance's greatness lies in our diversity of capabilities, Humans bring adaptability and resilience. Others bring technological prowess, diplomatic finesse, or scientific insight. Admiral Morgan's voice grew softer but no less intense. Together we are stronger than any of us alone. Isn't that the founding principle of this alliance? As she finished speaking, there was a moment of complete silence in the chamber. Then, surprisingly, it was General Vexathon who spoke first. Admiral Morgan makes a valid point, he said, his initial skepticism seemingly tempered. Different species, different strengths. Perhaps we have been too quick to view human capabilities through the lens of our own limitations. Gradually, a consensus began to form among the representatives. What had initially been viewed with suspicion was now being reconsidered as a potential asset. The discussion shifted from concerns about human intentions to how their unique capabilities might complement Alliance operations in previously inaccessible environments. As the formal session concluded, Admiral Morgan found herself approached by General Vexathon in a more private setting. "A compelling presentation, Admiral," he said, his tentacles moving in what humans had learned was a gesture of respect. "Thank you, General. I meant what I said about valuing our place in the Alliance." "I believe you did." Vexathon hesitated. "Though I must admit, watching your soldiers train on PT-117, it was both impressive and terrifying." Morgan smiled. "Most of human history can be described that way, General. We've learned to embrace the duality." "The Vexari see something in your species that resonates with them," observed Vexathon. "They are ancient and notoriously selective about their associations." "Perhaps they simply recognize a kindred spirit," suggested Morgan. "A species that refuses to be defined by the limitations others would impose." Vexathon's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. "You should know that after viewing the complete training footage, several Alliance military commanders have expressed interest in joint exercises with human forces. On less extreme worlds, of course." Morgan's smile widened. "I think that could be arranged. Though I should warn you, what we consider a pleasant training environment might still be challenging for some species." "Indeed." Vexathon made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "You humans have a saying, I believe. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." "We do say that," acknowledged Morgan. "Though we have another saying that might be more relevant to interspecies relations. Different strokes for different folks." As they parted ways, Admiral Morgan couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected diplomatic victory. What had begun as an investigation into potentially threatening human behavior had transformed into a deeper appreciation of humanity's unique place within the galactic community. Meanwhile, on the orbiting human interstellar defense force vessel Horizon, Captain Olivia Bennett and her squad were being debriefed on their training mission. "So let me get this straight," said Private Walsh, still looking slightly sunburned despite the advanced medical treatment he'd received. "Our entire Death World training exercise was being broadcast live to the Alliance High Command?" "Essentially, yes," confirmed Colonel Reeves, "though they thought we didn't know they were watching." "And the volcanic eruption, the Vexari showing up, was any of that planned?" asked Lieutenant Nakamura. "The eruption was genuine geological activity," said Colonel Reeves. "As for the Vexari, let's just say they have their own agenda, but their timing was fortuitous." "So what's the outcome?" asked Captain Bennett. "Does the Alliance now see us as dangerous lunatics or valuable allies?" Colonel Reeves smiled. "It appears the pendulum has swung decidedly toward the latter. Admiral Morgan reports that 7 Alliance species have already requested joint training programs with human forces, and 3 others have inquired about human expertise in establishing outposts on previously uninhabitable worlds." "All because they watched us run away from a volcano?" Walsh asked incredulously. "No," corrected Master Sergeant Volkov. "Because they watched us navigate environments that would kill them without a second thought. Sometimes the most effective diplomacy is simply showing what you're capable of." "Exactly," agreed Colonel Reeves. "The Alliance now understands something fundamental about humanity that they didn't before. We don't train on death worlds because we're bloodthirsty or paranoid. We do it because we can," finished Captain Bennett quietly. "Because refusing to accept limitations is what makes us human." As the debriefing concluded, Colonel Reeves had one final piece of information to share. "By the way, intelligence reports that the video of your escape from the magma stalker has gone viral across 17 Alliance worlds. You've become something of a celebrity squad." Walsh perked up immediately. "Really? Do we get appearance fees, endorsement deals? I've always wanted to be the face of alien energy drinks." "You'll get a 3-day pass and medical clearance for your next training rotation," replied Reeves dryly. which, I might add, has been bumped up to a Category 3 environment. What's a Category 3 again? Asked Walsh with trepidation. Atmospheric pressure twice Earth normal, gravity fluctuations, and possible temporal anomalies, supplied Takahashi helpfully. Temporal anomalies? Walsh looked horrified. You mean time distortions? Isn't that dangerous? Extremely, confirmed Captain Bennett with a small smile. But that's why we train, Private. If the galaxy is watching, we might as well give them a good show. As the squad departed, Colonel Reeves turned to Captain Bennett. They did well. The Alliance was impressed. And the Vexari? Even more so. Reeves handed her a data tablet. They've extended an invitation for Grizzly Squad to participate in a joint training exercise on one of their worlds. Bennett raised an eyebrow. Is that approved? Pending your acceptance. Admiral Morgan thinks it could be valuable, both militarily and diplomatically. And what's the environment like? Asked Bennett, already suspecting the answer. Reeves's smile was somewhere between amused and sadistic. Let's just say their idea of a moderately challenging training environment makes PT-117 look like a beach vacation. Of course it does, sighed Bennett, but there was no denying the gleam of excitement in her eyes. Tell Admiral Morgan we accept. 3 months later, in the Galactic Alliance High Command Chamber, General Vexathan was reviewing the latest intelligence reports when Admiral Kelshara entered, looking distinctly unsettled. Have you seen this? She demanded, activating the central holodisplay without waiting for a response. The display flickered to life, showing footage that seemed impossible. A mixed team of humans and Vexari moving through what appeared to be a region of fluctuating gravity, navigating terrain that repeatedly shifted between solid, liquid, and gaseous states. The environment itself seemed to defy the laws of physics as understood by most Alliance species. What am I looking at? Asked Vexathan, all 6 eyes blinking in confusion. Joint human-Vexari training on a planet in the system they call Nexus 9, replied Kelshara. A world located at the intersection of multiple dimensional planes. That's not possible, stated Vexathan flatly. Such environments are theoretical at best. Tell that to them, said Kelshara, gesturing at the display where a human figure, recognizable as Captain Bennett despite her advanced environmental suit, was carefully navigating a pathway that seemed to fold back on itself in defiance of Euclidean geometry. How did we obtain this footage? Asked Vexathan. The humans provided it, said Kelshara. Openly, along with an invitation for Alliance military observers to attend the next joint exercise. Vexathan was silent for a long moment, his tentacles curling and uncurling in thought. They're not just showing us what they can do, he said finally. They're inviting us to learn. Yes, agreed Kelshara, and I believe we should accept. Even though the environments they train in would kill most of our personnel? Especially because of that, replied Kelshara firmly. 3 months ago, we were panicking at the discovery that humans could train on worlds we considered death traps. Now they're offering to help us develop the capacity to do the same. And the Vexari are involved, mused Vexathan, after centuries of isolation. The galaxy is changing, General, said Kelshara, echoing the words of the Vexari observer. New threats emerge, old alliances shift. And species who can thrive in adversity will be valuable friends in the times to come, completed Vexathan, remembering the rest of the quote. He studied the impossible footage for another moment, then made his decision. Prepare a formal acceptance of their invitation, and begin selecting volunteers for the observer team. Volunteers only? Asked Kelshara. Vexathan's mouth parts clicked in what humans would recognize as a wry smile. Of course. After all, as our human allies like to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And if it does kill you? Asked Kelshara. Then we'll have learned an important lesson about our limitations, replied Vexathan philosophically. But something tells me the humans won't let that happen. They seem to have a knack for surviving the impossible, and teaching others to do the same. As they continued to watch the mind-bending training footage, neither of them noticed the small notification that appeared briefly at the edge of the display. An incoming transmission from yet another non-Alliance civilization, requesting information about the species called humans, and their remarkable capacity for adapting to hostile environments. The message was automatically flagged for later review, one of dozens received in recent weeks from civilizations across the galaxy, all suddenly very interested in the newcomers who trained on planets other species couldn't even visit. In the vastness of space, word was spreading. A new power had emerged, not through conquest or technological superiority, but through sheer, stubborn adaptability. And in a universe full of unknowns and dangers, Such allies were worth their weight in whatever precious resources each civilization valued most. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not with a declaration of war or a display of overwhelming force, but with something far more impressive: the ability to venture where others feared to tread, to thrive where others would perish. As the Vixari observer had noted, species who could turn hostile environments to advantage would be valuable friends indeed in the times to come. And the times to come